It's Radio Free 501c, the podcast of Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sapp, and we're so excited to be back for Season 6 and continue bringing you outstanding ideas and thought leaders and different ways of thinking. So don't forget to subscribe because you're not going to want to miss any of it. This week I'm joined by first-time guest Frank Gaynor, CAE, and he's here to talk to us about a really important topic: meetings in politically challenging environments. He's got a lot of great tips and advice no matter where you have your meetings. So welcome to episode 242. Hey everybody, it's Monday, June 10th, and that means it's time for another episode of Radio Free 501c, brought to you by Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sepp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips. I'm also a CAE and an ACNP, and I'm so glad you're here with this week's guest, first-time guest, possibly the last time he'll be on, because my guest, Frank Gaynor, is getting ready to retire. We're here to talk about when you're having your annual meeting or other conferences in a politically challenging environment, which I think a lot of people have had to deal with over the last 5 years. This week's guest, Frank Gaynor, is a longtime meetings and event expert, and he's going to share his experience with us. But before we jump into the topic, I want to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to our global audience. And thanks to everybody again for joining us wherever you may be. So, Frank, your first time guest, newly retired, but you wanted to share your experience in a politically challenging environment before you ride off into the sunset. So before we talk about that topic, though, would you like to say hello to the audience and tell us a little about yourself?
Good day, good evening, good afternoon, whatever it may be. I'm Frank Gaynor. I've been an occupational therapist now for close to 48 years. And I have, for the last 22 years, I have had the great opportunity to work at the National Association for Occupational Therapists, the American Occupational Therapy Association in Bethesda. And this is my 50th year as a member of AOTA. I joined as a student in 1974. And I've been responsible for the meeting and events at AOTA for the last 20 years.
That is an amazing track record, and congratulations. For the audience, most people don't know this, but Frank and I met many years ago when AOTA was one of my very first clients when I first started consulting. And I used to work with Frank and his team on editing their conference materials every year. And every year we made the process a little better. So, but Frank, you have such an interesting story to tell. And I know it's going to have a lot of great tips and advice for the audience who deals with conferences. So you had your annual conference this year in Orlando, Florida.
Yes,
and
yes.
Because Florida is a state that people question some of the policies there and how people will be treated, you got a lot of, shall we say, questions from members about why the meeting was in Orlando.
We certainly did. And we had just come out of our annual conference, which was in Kansas City, Missouri in 2023 at the end of April. And we weren't back in the office a week. And we began to get concerns about why we were being in Orlando in 2024. And didn't we know what was going on? And, it created a lot of angst among staff and the board members. And we had to do a quick pivot to, get Kansas City out of our minds and get into the Orlando move. And, one of the things I really advocated that I wanted to do was not to do the fluff, but to lean into it and talk to people, our members, potential attendees, about why we needed to be in Orlando. Because there were some concerns, certain segments wanted us to just pull out. And if we had pulled out because we chose Orlando in 2018 for a 2024 event, it would cost us 2.2 million in cancellation penalties. And people
Wow.
were saying, well, you're putting human lives above money and all of this. And so we decided we need to immediately develop some FAQs. And it was going to be our opportunity to educate folks on our selection process, how long a group our size must plan ahead to choose a city, because we're limited to 32 sites in the country.
Mhm.
And I don't know many associations that can take a $2.2 million hit.
Didn't think of one.
Yeah. So, we decided that, we developed these FAQs. We talked about the money that would be lost. We talked that we wouldn't be able to find a city to host a conference in 2024. And our annual conference is about 20% of our revenue. And we actually did reach out to a few cities who could, and no one had availability during our time frame because it was too short of a time frame. So we really worked with the Orange County Convention Center and Visit Orlando, and we shared with them our concerns, what we were hearing, and they were starting to get bombarded last year.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I read on ASAE was that the new Florida law said you couldn't use a government bathroom unless you use the one that your assigned gender at birth.
Mhm.
And that was not our policy at all. We wanted people to feel comfortable. You use the bathroom of your choice.
Mhm.
And so I wrote Orange County Convention Center, and I hadn't heard back from 2 weeks in 2 weeks. So I said, okay, this is making its round with leadership, the attorneys, and all of that. And we eventually got word back from them that said, as a leasee, we own the rights to the bathroom, so to speak. So we can set the rules. And so we took a big sigh of relief and said, okay, we're going to go all in with Orlando. And so we just started, the education process. And I wanted to make sure that folks were getting a consistent message who took the time to write us. And so I responded to all those queries that were coming in. So I didn't do a 2 sentence email, but I did a 2, 3 paragraph email
Mhm.
that really educated them about why we were sticking with Orlando.
Well, let me interrupt you there
Mhm.
for a second before you go on about some of the other things you did. Earlier, you mentioned that you would have taken a $2.2 million hit, and people are like, oh, you're putting money over people. You've already mentioned how far out you have to plan, but you and I, when we were getting ready for this episode, you were telling me all the other ramifications if you pull out of an area like that part of Orlando. And also you were at a privately owned facility, correct? Not like a
It's
national
county. It's
county.
county
Okay.
owned, but their attorneys have interpreted
Mhm.
that we are the leasee, and for the period of the lease, we can manage the properties as we want.
Okay. But then when people were saying, why don't you just pull out? Why don't you just go to another city? You had mentioned all of the other ripple effects, like on the local economy,
Mhm.
that maybe people aren't talking about. Like people, like maybe the food service workers would not have an assignment. The maids might not. So a lot of other people would be affected by that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that people don't think about, okay, we're just going to pull out, we're going to punish the state of Florida.
Hmm.
Well, who you're punishing are the workers who rely, especially Orlando, who rely on the tourism dollar, the
Right.
convention business. And we were working with the majority of our hotels were privately owned. They weren't the national chains.
Hmm.
And, another thing that we emphasize to folks are we've got 10,000 practitioners in the state of Florida. Do we abandon them or do we come and support them? And that's something that people don't think about. And we have a local conference committee that changes every year based upon the location. And so the president of the state association chooses the chair, and then the chair chooses their committee. And the president of the association had chosen someone I've worked with before. And Tia and I had a long conversation, and I said, Tia, I need you to pick a group of practitioners who will represent what Orlando is all about. And she hit a home run. I mean, I think we had 2 members from the LGBTQ community. We had a Latina. Latino, we had two African American practitioners, we had an occupational therapy assistant, which is important to us. And so in the history of AOTA, which is 117 years, this was the most diverse local conference committee we have ever had. And they
Wow.
were exceptional.
That's fantastic. So, and so far, everything you've done has been proactive.
Mhm.
So you did reach out to some other cities, you did write some consistent messaging, and then you had your FAQs, and then reaching out locally. I think more associations who do big conferences need to keep that in mind. The local conference committee is not just an empty title. It can be a really powerful ally.
And we asked them, every year the local conference committee picks a charity. And we asked them, okay, what charities do you want our members to contribute to? And they picked a group that takes donated books from the banned Florida list and will give them to an organization that will donate them to other organizations throughout the state of Florida. We supported the Zebra House, which is a program for LGBTQ teens. And then we submitted or supported a program called Quest, which works with developmentally delayed kids and adults. And so they were three great charities that were really unique to Orlando, and that people who may be hesitant about coming could feel better about coming. And the other thing we worked with Visit Orlando was tell us how much of our spend stays in Orange County, which is a very diverse community. And the vast majority of the money that's spent stays in Orlando. So we're supporting the community rather than the state of Florida.
And then how else did the CVB support you in sending these messages to your potential attendees, both members and non-members? So did they give you any other information, like what different groups might be able to enjoy in Orlando?
They were phenomenal. And I think we were the tip of the iceberg, and they were learning along with us what was important to people. And Visit Orlando created this phenomenal website that talks about their diversity and all the different groups that are represented in Orange County. And you can pick, if you're from the LGBTQ community, they'll have a list of restaurants that you may want to go to or clubs. The same for the African American community, Hispanic. They've got everything covered. And it really is a mosaic of what is really going on in Orlando.
Mhm. Well, and again, another local ally,
Mhm.
the CVB. And I wonder if a lot of us, when we're planning conferences, even remember that they can give us even more information in this situation. So, so far in this story, so you started getting pushback on Orlando right after your 23 meeting.
Mhm.
You decided not to use the fluff. So, could you describe for the audience what you consider not respond with the fluff?
I stick to the facts.
Mhm.
Stick to the facts. What's it going to cost?
Mhm.
What can you do? And, I think pulling out is kind of an easy thing to do. I think leaning in is much more challenging. It certainly takes a lot more work,
Mhm.
um, and building those relationships with folks and just telling them, share with them your thinking. I
Mhm.
just have, and we were getting questions. Well, we can't talk about transgender healthcare. We can't talk about this. We can't talk about that because we're in the state of Florida. And we said, no, you can. And we are not changing our call for papers at all and going to be censoring any type of presentations. You
Right.
continue to present on the topics that are important to the profession. And
Mhm.
so we made the choice to actually, do a women's health panel, do a forum on, abortion,
Mhm.
do a gender nonconforming panel. We were going to highlight these. And, and the majority of people said, okay, there was always going to be some naysayers. Oh, you're just pandering. you're just pandering, and or you're woke. And we kept saying, we want everyone to feel comfortable. And we always hire a security company, but
Hmm.
because we were going to Florida, we pushed that up by 4 months.
Hmm.
So we could talk to people about what our security plan was. I mean, some people said, we want armed guards. And other people said, we don't want armed guards. I mean, it was all over the what will take you to feel safe in Florida. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's really well. So, and I just love this, Frank, because you did lean into it. You didn't just say, now they're their members, it'll be okay. You actually kind of pushed the envelope a little bit. Let's do these provocative panel discussions. And also a lot of times what happens, whether you agree with what they do in Florida or not, a lot of times the the communication of supposedly what's happening is garbled or misinterpreted, and it's not seen as like, well, this is for the public school system, it's for this, whatever. That doesn't mean that the Bill of Rights is suspended when you go to Florida, right? It just means they have some different policies within their state for different areas that the state government manages it. But as far as like what people can still do, you can still do those things. And I think that pushing that and letting people know that there's a very diverse community within Florida, and you can still come and have these conversations. I think it's kind of funny. People get so upset about the basics, right? Like the bathroom. So it's really interesting to know that once you lease a space, you're actually leasing the bathrooms as well. I guess I never thought of it that way. I thought they're letting us use the bathrooms, and then you can label them however you want. And I've been to conferences where that's happened, where they've just put signs up on the door, but I just never thought about it, because frankly, Frank, I look at it like this. It's like, and of course, public bathrooms and private bathrooms are completely different. But when you're at home, everybody just uses the same bathroom. There's not like a men's room and a women's room and a other gender room. I mean, everybody uses the same bathroom. So I'm really kind of the opinion we could stop a lot of this upset about public bathrooms if we just had like gender neutral bathrooms everywhere and you just like went in. Now I know some people aren't comfortable with that, but a lot of this stuff I think is actually not easily resolved, but is resolvable, especially understanding the fact that when you're renting the space, you're renting the whole space.
Exactly.
And
And,
and
we had pharmacists were next to us, but we had very clear space that was defined for our group.
Mhm.
And, one of the other things that, we really wanted to look at, okay, we're a very diverse profession.
Mhm.
And, we were very fortunate in that two significant events were happening this year. Our National Black OT Caucus was celebrating their 50th anniversary in 2024, and they reached out to us and said, we would like to have a gala in Orlando and bring in all our founders and all of this. And can AOTA work with us? And I said, certainly, as long as we can talk about this and that the National Black OT Caucus is on board. And then we were actually approached by Howard University in Washington, D.C., which is a HBCU, Historic Black College and University.
Oh
And
yeah.
they were celebrating their 50th anniversary as the first HBCU to have an accredited program in occupational therapy. So I said, well, we can work with you on recognizing that milestone. And things like ribbons, the gala, giving space, programming was all something that we could do and to show folks that we were serious and that we weren't ignoring the issues, but that we wanted to celebrate some of these milestones. And, you know, I was telling Cecilia before we got started, I know someone on Facebook, and he came out last October and said, I just want everyone to know I do drag. And so I texted him and said, we need to talk. And I said, so we have a session every year prior to our start of our keynote. And I said, would you be comfortable leading the keynote in drag? And he said, I need to think about this. And he said, yeah, I'm ready to do that. I'm ready to come out to the world. and he was a hit. He was a hit. And he didn't go little drag, he was big drag. And I mean, it was, yeah, he filled the screen with his outfit. And yeah.
Wow. That's fantastic. And I just and also, Frank, you and I were also talking before we started the official episode about, when I went to college back in the 80s, I went to a small liberal arts school with a theater department. And so, we had, our own gay community on campus, and there were several drag queens on campus, and they were so fun because they're performers, they have big personalities, and of course, all the girls were jealous because they always looked prettier than us when they put their makeup on. But it's great. And I think, so would it be fair to say, Frank, your experience organizing your Orlando conference, making it happen within this atmosphere of people being concerned and having complaints and sometimes making demands about what you should or should not do. Do you feel that leaning in actually made it a better conference than it might have been?
Oh, it was phenomenal. I mean, it was a joyous event. I felt like we were finally getting out of COVID because the
Mm-hmm.
last two in-person years, I mean, we went to San Antonio in 2022,
Mm-hmm.
and we were finally getting back to pre-COVID numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this really helped us. Our number of student attendees is finally getting almost back to pre-COVID.
Wow.
And it, there was nothing on site that happened that caused any drama. It was just people were enjoying themselves. Orlando is one of the top visited areas in the US. We sold, I think, I want to say 2,000 Disney tickets,
Wow.
using the discounts. I mean, yeah. And one thing that really had that helped us too was we did a town hall and we had our president on. I talked about the programming. We had two reps from Visit Orlando on who could address the concerns about bathroom access, other safety. And then we had a woman who identifies as gender nonconforming. And when she spoke about how we needed to come to Florida to support her and all the other Floridian practitioners, it was a mic drop moment.
Mm-hmm.
It was a mic drop moment. And that was early in September. And she just wrote me out of the blue and said, I really hope you come to Florida and blah. And I said, Vanessa, I have a question for you. How are you willing to share your story in this message? And she said, yes. And then a couple of months later, we had them all meet the local conference committee, this very diverse group of individuals who live in Orlando, and it was their chance to ask them questions about safety, what they recommend, and they did a tremendous job. Tremendous.
I keep thinking, hearing all the details of this wonderful, varied conference and how many different people were able to participate, and you were open and welcoming to sharing other people's historic moments, like the galas and the celebrating the Black OT caucus and the historically Black college anniversary of having an accredited program. This to me is really an example of what true diversity is. Uh, Finding all these different people and letting them be who they are, and yet finding what everyone has in common.
Mhm.
Because what everyone has in common is they want to do the best they can for their patients as occupational therapists and celebrate their profession and come together and share knowledge. And yet everybody could be who they were and celebrate their own unique identity. And so to me, this is an example of really how to do something right and how leaning in really can make the event better, or the situation better, or the project better, whatever it is that people might have some fear about or some contention about. And I think this is a wonderful high note for you to close out your career on, Frank. So congratulations.
Thank you. And, it's a good way to end, a nice, very diverse career. And I do want to say one thing. See, you know, our director of meetings kept saying, I got a surprise for you. I got a surprise for you when you get to Orlando. Because we like picture those selfie moments, those selfie places where you can go and get a picture with your friends and that. And she
Yeah.
had set up a couple of Adirondack chairs, a beach scene with flamingos, and with a pride flag. And
Yeah.
that got a lot of pics over the course of the conference. And actually other attendees from other shows were coming to get a picture with our pride flag and our pink flamingos. So
I love it. So that's even better. So you were willing to share your selfie area with the other conferences,
yes, definitely.
because
Mhm.
I just like it, we're all in this together. So, we should just quit fighting with each other. Just like,
Yes.
let's help each other out here. Let's do what we can for each other.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Wonderful. So,
But if
well,
Mhm.
oh, go
I'd
ahead.
be happy to share if anybody wants to follow up with me on because I am retiring from AOTA, or I have retired from AOTA. Feel free to reach out to me at fgainer, FGAINER, at verizon.net. And I'll be happy to share with you our FAQs, our messaging that we've done. We've done this with a number of associations because we're encouraging you to hold fast and make it a celebratory event and, help the local community.
That is great. So there's a lot in your story, a lot of great things, but what's the one thing you would like the audience to take away today?
Don't run from it. Lean in, work with your local folks. Um, I can't emphasize enough, we can't abandon our members who live in these jurisdictions that we may not choose to live in or we may not choose to visit, but we are a national association and we represent everyone in the country. And I would, you just got to lean in and support them, and you can make it happen.
Wonderful advice. Thank you so much, Frank. Frank Gaynor, everyone, newly retired, but going out on a high note and wanting to make sure he passes on what he learned. A lot of learning in this story. So follow up with Frank and get to know him a little better if you don't know him already. And he'll be happy to share with you. So, well, we have to go rogue for now, but we'll be back next week with another exciting episode. So in the meantime, if you would like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and what we can do to help your organization bloom outside the box, check out our website at roguetulips.com. If you are considering getting the CAE or already have it and looking for some CAE credit courses, check out our education program, which you can also find at our website on the education page. We have our Notify Me form set up for fall. So if you're interested in getting news about fall courses, fill out that form and we'll get back to you later this summer. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And on behalf of Frank and myself, we'll see you next time.